But it's still getting... It's too big. Guys, it's not even on the screen anymore. I recently got back into PC gaming after a very long hiatus. Frankly, because I hate Windows. But because of my work, I had to build another Windows machine, and I stumbled across GOG.com, and the highlight has clearly been X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter, because it's probably the best game ever. That game is somewhere around 20 years old, and it's awesome. But the problem is it requires a joystick. I mean, you can't play with any sort of digital controls. It requires an analog input for the flight. So this forced me to look into buying a joystick for the first time in, I don't know how long, 15 years or so. I did map a PS3 DualShock controller to try it out on here, and that works fine, but it's not the same as actually getting your hands on a stick. And so this led me to my first one, the Thrustmaster T-Flight HOTAS X. Now, this brand new was $50. It's pretty cool, actually. And if I had stopped here, I would have been happy. I guess that's a little foreshadowing. This stick gives you 12 programmable controls, one POV hat, X and Y, plus you have twist for rudder, you have a throttle, and then there's also a slider button on the back. This one will give you 16 buttons. Some of them are placed in different spots. Numerous sliders. It's got 3 POV hats. It's got a mode switch to switch between different flight modes. A lot of this has to be programmed within the Saitek utility. At a glance, this one looks way more impressive. Only because these LEDs, it lights up like a Christmas tree. And you can, within your joystick configuration, actually select what color the LEDs are between red, green, and yellow. Besides the specification differences, aesthetically, what's different about them? Well, the throttle on the T-Flight has no weight to it at all, which is fine. There's a notch in the middle, like a center detent, and there's otherwise no resistance, which is fine. Again, you don't really know what you're missing. However, compared to the stick itself, the stick is pretty high resistance. X52 has a little bit of resistance to the throttle, but what I don't like is that at the extreme ends, so at the 0 end and the 100 end, there's like an extra notch. And you can see this is suction cupped down, but just to get to that notch, you have to be putting some downward force on there to not move the throttle stick around. So that's a little bit inconvenient. But just comparing the sticks, the X52 has much less resistance. Now I think that might be adjustable by changing the springs, but if you just look at your returns, at first I wanted to hate this because it didn't feel real, but it actually is better. It's more like, it's like adding Expo to an RC controller. It deadens the center point so that you have a little less sensitivity, which allows you finer control in the middle. And I think that's the same here. Because there's a little less resistance, you're able to more finely get your center controls as compared to the T-Flight. And that actually is important in X-Wing when you're really trying to lock on and maintain a lock. Those concussion missiles, because those are legit. One of the main advantages of the T-Flight is its weight. This thing is much heavier, and they're probably adding weights, but that's fine. It feels so much better that way. The other cool thing is if you want to stay compact, you can see this is already attached, but you have the option of separating them so that you can do a little bit more of a traditional flight control system. The only drawback is the cord connecting these is maybe only, I want to say, 1.5 feet or so, so it's really meant for desktop. It's not meant for installation purposes, but it still does the job. Now the X52, the cord in between them is much longer, which is nice, but then they skimped on the USB cord, so then you're tethered to the computer, or you could just get a USB extension cable. But the main problem I have with the X52, and this is really the only problem, is that these suction cups are worthless and they're way too light. So what I'll probably do is pop open the bottom of these and just drop some hobby weights into the bases to make them a little bit heavier. Because otherwise, they feel great, except for the throttle. Which one do you like better?
This one.
Why?
Because I nice too.
Ultimately, I've decided that despite ergonomically, I like the T-Flight out of the box, there's just something far more pleasing about having a Christmas tree full of lights on your flight stick. So I'm glad I saved my receipt for the T-Flight.
Okay, is it gonna get bigger? Oh yeah, Geek ADD. But it's still getting, it's too big. Guys, it's not even on the screen anymore.
I recently got back into PC gaming after a very long hiatus, frankly because I hate Windows. But because of my work, I had to build another Windows machine, and I stumbled across GOG.com, and the highlight has clearly been X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter, because it's probably the best game ever.